how well do you really know the people closest to you? I mean, the ones you trust completely, maybe even with your life. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a case that really shakes those assumptions to the core. It's the chilling, pretty complex story of Stacey Castor. You might know her as the Black Widow. Our mission here is to unpack all the layers of, well, deception and tragedy, using the source material you gave us, that detailed overview from Wikipedia. So get ready, because we're going to uncover some genuinely surprising facts, the kind of intricate details that feed the full, very disturbing picture of this notorious case.
And it's such a compelling case because, it's not just one incident we're talking about. It involves multiple suspected poisonings and a really shocking betrayal of basic family bonds. It forces you to confront that darker side of human behavior, What pushes someone to these kinds of extremes?
Okay, let's unpack this right from the start. So the story begins with Stacey Ruth Daniels. She was born in Clay, New York, back in 1967. She met her first husband, Michael Wallace, when she was pretty young, only 17. They got married in 1988, had two daughters, Ashley, born 88, and Bree in 91. Now, financially, things weren't easy. Michael worked nights as a mechanic, and Stacey was an office manager. And interestingly, even back then, there were whispers, rumors of affairs on both sides.
Yeah, and what's really revealing about this early time is the sort of family dynamic that started setting up. Michael was reportedly very close to Bree, the younger one, and Stacey, maybe to compensate, became, quote, best friends with Ashley, the older daughter. This specific bond, particularly with Ashley, it's not just background noise. It actually sets the stage for, well, some critical manipulation later on. It's quite important.
Right. So fast forward to late 1999. Michael Wallace starts getting sick, but intermittently. His family said he was, unsteady, coughing, sometimes swollen. They urged him to see a doctor, but he didn't. And then, tragically, he died in early 2000. The doctors, they initially said it was a heart attack, but here's where you get that first, major red flag. Michael's sister, she was skeptical. She actually requested an autopsy. Castor refused, said she trusted the doctors. From an investigation standpoint, how big a deal is a refusal like that so early on?
Oh, it's highly significant. Yes, initial medical calls can sometimes be incomplete, but flat out refusing an autopsy, especially when other family members are raising concerns, that immediately sends up flares for investigators. It suggests, maybe a desire to control the narrative or maybe prevent anyone from looking too closely. In cases where foul play is later suspected, these early refusals often become really critical pieces of the puzzle. It hints at evasion.
Okay, so time moves on. 2003, Stacey marries David Castor. He owned an air conditioning company and she worked there as his office manager. Then, August 2005, a call comes into the Onondaga County Sheriff's Office. It's Stacey. She's saying David locked himself in their bedroom, he's depressed, hasn't been seen for a day. Sergeant Robert Woolley gets there, kicks in the door, and finds David dead.
Yeah.
Nearby, a container of antifreeze and a half-full glass of that bright green liquid. Castor apparently started screaming, "He's not dead, he's not dead!"
Right, and this is such a classic scenario, isn't it? An apparent suicide that just starts to unravel pretty quickly when you look closer. The coroner initially ruled it suicide, but then the police found Stacey's fingerprints on the glass. And crucially, a turkey baster with David's DNA on the tip. Forensically speaking, what makes finding that baster so damning if it was supposed to be suicide?
That baster detail is just, it's deeply unsettling.
Precisely. It strongly suggests it wasn't consensual. David's DNA on the tip, plus the antifreeze. It led investigators to theorize that Castor used that baster to, force-feed him the antifreeze once he was too weak to fight back. It's a detail that just completely flips the script, doesn't it? From a self-inflicted act to a suspected, horribly personal assault.
And what the investigators did next really shifted the whole case. They put Castor's house under surveillance, and also the gravesites of both her husbands. Remember, she'd specifically asked for Michael and David to be buried side by side. The detectives figured, look, a genuinely grieving widow, she's going to visit the graves eventually. Yeah. She never did, not once. That absence, that lack of visiting, it was a remarkably telling detail. It just fed their suspicion. So at this point, the investigators felt the only way, really, to prove she was responsible for both deaths was to exhume Michael Wallace's body.
And that exhumation, that became the pivotal moment in the whole investigation. It provided the absolute crucial link connecting these two, seemingly separate deaths. Toxicology confirmed exactly what they suspected. Michael Wallace had also died from antifreeze poisoning, ethylene glycol. It established this undeniable, chilling pattern. They went from suspicion to actual concrete evidence of a serial method.
So now it's September 2007. The suspicion is mounting, investigators are closing in, and Castor reportedly panicked. After she learns about Michael's exhumation, learns they found antifreeze, she comes up with this horrifying plan. Frame her own daughter, Ashley, for both murders. It's Ashley's first day of college. Investigators question her about her father's death, tell her he was poisoned. She's obviously upset, calls Castor right away. Soon after that call, Castor invites Ashley home for a drink. Ashley accepts because, remember, Castor wasn't just her mom, she was her, quote, best friend. The very next day, Castor offers Ashley another drink, one Ashley described as nasty tasting. 17 hours later, Ashley is found comatose in her bed by her younger sister, Bree.
I mean, this sequence, it's just a stark, brutal example of extreme manipulation, the ultimate betrayal of trust. Bree finds what looks like a suicide note next to Ashley, supposedly confessing to the murders. Castor grabs the note quickly, later gives it to the paramedics. And what's truly chilling here is that tests showed Ashley had potentially fatal levels of painkillers in her system. She was literally minutes from death. When Ashley finally woke up, she completely denied writing any note. All she remembered was her mother making her an alcoholic drink, which was something Stacey had never done before. It just highlights this common tactic, in domestic crimes, exploiting closeness, vulnerability for absolutely malevolent reasons.
So this all leads to the end of a 2-year investigation. In 2007, Stacey Castor is arrested. The charges: David's murder and the attempted murder and framing of Ashley. The trial kicks off in 2009. The prosecution, led by DA William Fitzpatrick, their argument is clear. The computer-written suicide note was written by Castor herself. And Ashley, who remember was only 12 when her father died, she bravely gets on the stand and testifies. She didn't kill anyone, and she definitely didn't write that note.
Yeah, the prosecution's strategy to just dismantle Castor's suicide story for David was meticulous. They pointed out, okay, no fingerprints from David on the antifreeze glass or the container, then the turkey baster his DNA, ethylene glycol residue, hammering home that force-feeding theory. They even brought up Castor's claim that David supposedly got the idea for antifreeze suicide from watching a news report about Lynn Turner, another woman who'd killed lovers with antifreeze. It sounds maybe innocent on its own, but in context it became incredibly damning. And on top of that, the physical evidence. Calcium oxalate crystals found in the kidneys of both victims that definitively pointed to antifreeze poisoning in both cases. It shows how all these small facts, when you piece them together, they create this undeniable picture.
And the motive. Pretty straightforward, really. Money, plain and simple. Castor wanted life insurance payouts. She wanted their estates. She'd even changed David's will to cut out his son from a previous marriage. But maybe the most compelling piece of evidence against her, finding several drafts of that supposed suicide note right there on her computer. Forensic investigators looked at the timestamps, confirmed the note was written while Ashley was physically at school. That proved definitively Ashley couldn't possibly have written it.
And connecting that to the bigger picture, the digital evidence, they even used typing sounds. These sounds were captured on police wiretaps while Castor was on the phone talking to a friend. Prosecutors argued, look, that's her working on the note right then, even though she later claimed she didn't remember using the computer that day. But crucially, the note itself had Castor's fingerprints on it, not Ashley's. And then there's that verbal slip, wasn't there? The word antifreeze misspelled as anti-free in the note.
Yes. And she used the exact same phrase, anti-free, in an interview.
Exactly. Which she tried to explain away as just, a slip of the tongue. But these tiny inconsistencies, under the intense scrutiny of a trial, they can absolutely shatter a defense.
The defense, well, they predictably tried to create reasonable doubt. They actually suggested that Ashley, maybe at age 11, could have killed her father out of jealousy over Bree getting more attention, and then killed David because they had a rocky relationship. It seems. Quite a stretch.
A huge stretch.
But in a really shocking twist, Castor's own mother actually went public, saying she thought Ashley was guilty. Castor herself took the stand, stuck to her story. Ashley did it. She implied her daughter was mentally ill, but admitted she never once sought therapy for her. The cross-examination sounds like it was intense. Prosecutor Fitzpatrick really zeroed in on Castor's inconsistent behavior, especially, like you said, given her background working for an ambulance company. She didn't get help for Ashley for 17 hours after finding her comatose, and she claimed David, who was literally staggering and vomiting, quote, looked okay. Fitzpatrick hammered the point. How could someone who supposedly lost 2 husbands to poisoning not immediately rush to get help for her daughter in that state? It just defies logic, defies basic human instinct.
Completely.
So February 5th, 2009, the verdict comes in, guilty. Second-degree murder for David's death. Attempted second-degree murder for overdosing and framing Ashley. Reports say she kept her eyes shut tight as the verdicts were read.
And the sentencing, March 5th, 2009, was apparently filled with just raw emotion. Prosecutor Christine Garvey called Castor cold, calculating, without any emotion. stated very plainly that she places no value on human life, not even her own flesh and blood. David's son called her a monster, and Judge Fahey, he declared Castor was, quote, in a class all by herself for trying to murder her own child just to frame them. That kind of condemnation from the bench really underscores how extreme her actions were seen.
Yeah. Castor got the maximum sentences, served consecutively, so 25 years to life for David's murder, another 25 years for trying to kill Ashley, plus about 1 to 4 years for forging the will. Effectively, it was a life sentence. She wouldn't even be eligible for parole until she'd served just over 51 years. She'd be almost 88 years old. And Ashley Wallace's statement at that sentencing, just heartbreaking. She told the judge she hated her mother, hated her for ruining so many people's lives, but then admitted, confusingly, she still loved her. Wished for an apology she knew she'd likely never get. Her closing words to her mother were incredibly powerful. "This is goodbye, Mom. As hard as you tried, I survived and I will survive because now I'm surrounded by people who love me. I'm doing good things in this world despite making me in every sense of the word an orphan." Just wow.
It really gives you chills. In this case, it offers such a chilling psychological profile, doesn't it? Even after the trial, Castor went on a 2020 special, still maintaining her innocence, still blaming Ashley. Dr. James Knoll, a forensic psychiatrist, described her as a classic Black Widow type, someone likely to have killed again if she hadn't been caught. He pointed out how Ashley's supposed suicide note was just unnaturally focused on clearing Castor mentioning it like 14 times. Knoll said murderers like this often stick to a code. Deny, 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 right to the bitter end. They see even their own children as objects, really, tools for their convenience. It's indicative of profound psychopathic traits, that complete lack of empathy, prioritizing self-preservation above absolutely everything.
And here's one last truly chilling thought that came up later. Michael Wallace's family. They came to believe Castor might have also murdered her own father, Jerry Daniels. He died back in 2002, shortly after Stacey visited him in the hospital, bringing him an open can of soda. And of course, she was the executor of his estate too. Makes you wonder.
It really does. That potential pattern is deeply disturbing.
Stacey Castor ultimately died in her prison cell. June 11, 2016. She was 48. Her death was later ruled a heart attack. Natural causes, no signs of suicide or foul play. Her story, as you might imagine, was adapted into a Lifetime movie in 2020 called Poisoned Love, the Stacey Castor story. Wow, what an incredibly intense, disturbing deep dive that was. All those layers of deception, the tragedy surrounding Stacey Castor, really makes you think, doesn't it, about how misleading appearances can be and the just devastating generational impact of betrayal within a family.
It's such a stark reminder of, well, the complexities of human nature, how far some people will actually go for personal gain, even turning against their own flesh and blood. The details we uncovered here, from the specific poison, the turkey baster, right down to the computer timestamps, they paint this picture of meticulous, cold planning hidden behind this mask of normalcy, even victorhood.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something to think about. What does it really say about our human capacity for denial, for manipulation? When someone can not only commit these horrific acts, but then try to pin it on their own child, and then just keep denying it right up until their very last days. It truly makes you wonder about the secrets that might be hidden in plain sight, maybe even within the families we think we know best.